The wind on Verath Prime had stopped blowing 3,000 years ago. Now the planet sat silent under a red sun, its atmosphere frozen into crystals that covered the ground like snow. Dr. Kelvin Thrace stepped carefully through the ruins, his breathing mask fogging in the cold air. He had been digging here for 3 months, searching through the remains of a city that nobody could identify. Kelvin was not human. He came from a species called the Vexillians, tall beings with skin like smooth stone and tendrils where humans had hair. He had spent 40 years studying dead civilizations across the galaxy. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. The scanner in his hand started beeping faster as he approached a collapsed building. The readings showed something massive underneath, something his equipment could not identify. Kelvin called his team over, and they began clearing the rubble. It took 2 days of careful work before they found the entrance. The door was huge, at least 20 feet tall and 15 feet wide. The material looked like stone, but felt wrong to the touch. It was neither warm nor cold, and when they tried to scan it, the machines gave error messages. Whatever this door was made from, it did not exist in any of their databases. Commander Zeph Naylor arrived from the ship in orbit. He was the expedition leader, a cautious man who rarely showed emotion. When he saw the door, his eyes widened. He ordered everyone to stand back while they attempted to open it. They tried everything: cutting lasers, sonic hammers, even explosives. Nothing worked. The door did not have a scratch on it. Then one of the younger scientists leaned against the door while taking a break. It swung open silently. The team stood frozen for a moment, then Kelvin laughed. The door had no lock. Whatever lay inside, the builders wanted it to be found. The archive stretched beyond sight. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above them, and rows of stone tablets lined both walls as far as their lights could reach. Kelvin counted the first row and multiplied. There had to be at least 10,000 tablets, maybe more, in the sections they could not see yet. Each tablet was covered in symbols, strange, flowing marks that seemed to shift when you looked directly at them. Kelvin had spent his life studying ancient languages. He had decoded texts from 40 different extinct species. But these symbols made no sense at all. They did not follow any pattern he recognized. They did not match anything in the galactic database of languages, which contained over 47 million dialects. The team set up their equipment and began working. They took photographs, made recordings, ran every test they could think of. The tablets were old, incredibly old. Dating tests suggested they had been here for at least 50,000 years, possibly longer. But the symbols remained unreadable. Kelvin brought in specialists from across the galaxy. Linguists who could speak 30 languages each arrived and stared at the tablets in confusion. Cryptographers ran the symbols through quantum computers and got nothing useful. Even the artificial intelligence systems could not find a pattern. One AI spent 72 hours analyzing a single tablet, and finally reported that the symbols appeared to be random, which Kelvin knew could not be true. Weeks passed. The team grew frustrated. They had found what might be the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history, and they could not read a single word of it. Arguments broke out in the camp. Some scientists wanted to remove the tablets and take them to better facilities. Others insisted they stay in place. Moving the tablets felt wrong somehow, like disturbing a grave. Commander Naylor grew concerned about the time and money being spent. His superiors were asking questions about why such a large team was stuck on a dead planet with nothing to show for it. He needed results, or they would have to leave the archive and return later with different equipment, different funding, different everything. During a secure call with his commanders, Naylor mentioned the problem to Admiral Grant Phillips, who was human. Philip suggested something that made Naylor uncomfortable. He suggested bringing in a human analyst. Humans were new to the galactic community, only joining 300 years ago. Most species still viewed them as primitives who got lucky with their technology. But humans had a strange reputation for pattern recognition. They saw connections that other species missed. They solved puzzles in ways that seemed bizarre, but often worked. Admiral Phillips assured Naylor that he had the right person for the job, someone who specialized in difficult translations and historical mysteries. Kelvin protested when he heard the plan. Bringing in a human felt like admitting defeat. His team had over 600 years of combined experience in archaeology and linguistics. How could some human, barely more than a child by galactic standards, succeed where they had failed? Naylor overruled him. They had nothing to lose. If the human failed, they were no worse off than before. If she succeeded, they would have their answer. He gave the order, and 3 days later, Lieutenant Kate Morrison arrived on Verith Prime. Kate stepped off the shuttle, wearing a standard Earth uniform and carrying a small bag. She looked young, probably in her 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple tie. She smiled and introduced herself to the team, shaking hands in that peculiar human custom. Most of the scientists barely acknowledged her. She asked to see the archive immediately. Kelvin led her through the camp, expecting her to be impressed by the size of the operation they had set up. She barely glanced at it. She only had eyes for the archive entrance. When they stepped inside, Kate stopped and stood very still. She looked at the first row of tablets for a long moment, without saying anything. Kelvin started to explain the symbols, the dating, the tests they had run. Kate held up one hand, asking him to be quiet. She walked slowly down the first row, her head tilted slightly as she examined the tablets. Her expression changed from curiosity to recognition to something that looked like fear. She touched one tablet gently, her hand shaking. Kelvin watched her carefully. After 30 minutes of silence, he asked if she needed help understanding the scope of the project. Kate turned to him, and he was surprised to see that her face had gone pale. She asked him one question. How long had humans been spacefaring according to galactic records? Kelvin told her 300 years, give or take. Kate nodded slowly, like he had confirmed something she did not want to believe. Then she said something that made Kelvin's blood run cold. She said she needed to speak with Commander Naylor immediately, on a secure channel. She needed to contact Earth's Central Archive Authority with emergency priority. And she needed everyone to understand that what they had found was not an alien archive. She said the tablets were human. Commander Naylor sat in the archive, listening to Kate explain something impossible. Dr. Kelvin Thrace stood beside him, his facial tendrils twitching in agitation. 3 other senior scientists completed the circle around Kate, and all of them looked like they wanted to call security. Kate pulled up a holographic display from her personal device. Images appeared in the air, showing stone tablets covered in symbols identical to the ones surrounding them. She explained that these images came from Earth's most restricted archives, facilities that only a handful of people had access to. Kelvin interrupted her. He said humans had only reached space 300 years ago. The tablets in this archive were 50,000 years old at minimum. The idea that they were human made no sense. Kate agreed that it made no sense. Then she showed them carbon dating results from the tablets found on Earth. The results ranged from 80,000 to over 200,000 years old. She told them about the discoveries on Earth that nobody could explain. Tablets found 3 miles deep in the Mariana Trench, buried under sediment layers that took millions of years to form. More tablets sealed in Antarctic ice from before the last ice age. Strange artifacts in cave systems that appeared on no maps, in places where modern humans had no reason to be. Earth's scientific community had kept these findings classified for over a century. The discoveries made no sense with known human history. Homo sapiens had only developed writing 5,000 years ago. Finding tablets with advanced symbolic systems dating back hundreds of thousands of years suggested something impossible. Either the dating was wrong, or human history was wrong. Kate said her organization, the Deep Archive Division, existed specifically to study these anomalies. They collected every strange artifact, every piece of evidence that did not fit standard human development. They had hundreds of tablets, similar to the ones on Verath Prime. The symbols were identical. Not similar, identical, down to the smallest marks. Commander Naylor asked the obvious question. If these tablets existed on Earth, why had nobody reported them to the galactic community? Kate looked uncomfortable. She explained that Earth's governments had decided to keep quiet about discoveries they could not explain. They feared looking foolish or primitive if they admitted they had found artifacts from their own past that they could not read. Kelvin demanded proof. Kate connected to Earth through an encrypted channel that took several minutes to establish. When the connection opened, a stern-looking man appeared in the hologram. He introduced himself as Director Paul Grant, head of Earth's Central Archive Authority. He confirmed everything Kate had said and authorized her to share classified information with the alien scientists. Director Grant explained that Earth had been trying to decode these tablets for 93 years. They had made some progress, enough to understand that the tablets were warnings of some kind. But full translation remained impossible. The symbols required context that humans had lost, knowledge that no longer existed in their civilization. Kate turned to the first tablet in the archive and began describing what she could read. The symbols were not a traditional language. They worked more like a rebus puzzle, combining pictographic elements with mathematical concepts and emotional contexts. Reading them required understanding all three layers simultaneously. She translated slowly, her finger tracing symbols as she spoke. The tablet warned about the danger of uncontrolled power. It spoke of machines that could think beyond human understanding. It described weapons that killed in ways beyond simple death, reaching across time and space to unmake their targets from reality itself. The more Kate read, the quieter the archive became. She moved to the second tablet, then the third. Each one contained warnings about different technologies, reality manipulation engines that could restructure matter at the quantum level, consciousness transfer systems that could copy minds but destroyed the originals in the process, time dilation fields that aged everything inside them by thousands of years, in seconds. Kelvin felt his certainty crumbling. The technologies Kate described were beyond anything the galactic community had achieved. Some were beyond what they had imagined possible. If these warnings were real, if ancient humans had actually built these things, then humanity was not the primitive newcomer species everyone believed. Kate reached a tablet that made her stop and read it 3 times before translating. Her voice shook as she spoke. The tablet said that humans had destroyed their first home through careless experimentation. It said they fled to the stars and settled on new worlds, including Verath Prime. It said they brought their technology with them, still believing they could control it, still believing they were wise enough to wield unlimited power. The tablet described what happened next in clinical detail. The colony on Verath Prime had built something called a recursion engine. Kate could not fully explain what it did, but the results were clear. The engine activated and began unraveling reality in expanding waves. The colonists tried to shut it down and discovered they could not. The technology had grown beyond their ability to stop it. In desperation, the survivors destroyed their own civilization. They burned their cities, shattered their technology, and scattered across the galaxy. Some went back to Earth, others fled to distant worlds. Before they left, they built this archive and others like it. They wanted future generations to know what had happened. They wanted to leave warnings so the same mistakes would not be repeated. Kate translated the final line of the tablet in a whisper. It said that anyone reading these warnings was probably human, because only humans would be foolish enough and curious enough to return to the stars after destroying themselves once. It said the warnings were written in symbols that only humans would recognize, encoded in ways that required human intuition to decode. The archive fell silent. Commander Naylor broke the quiet first. He asked Kate if she understood what this meant. She nodded. It meant humanity had risen to greatness before, achieved power beyond imagination, and deliberately chose to forget everything to escape the consequences of their own success. Dr. Kelvin sat down heavily on the archive floor. He had spent 40 years studying fallen civilizations, but this was different. Those species had died out or been destroyed by external forces. Humanity had survived by choosing to destroy itself, by deliberately regressing to primitiveness and losing thousands of years of knowledge and development. One of the other scientists asked why, if ancient humans had such power, why give it up? Why not just be more careful? Kate pulled up another tablet and translated it without being asked. The tablet explained that they tried being careful. They tried regulation and oversight and control, but the technologies were too powerful. Eventually, someone always made a mistake, or did something selfish, or simply got unlucky. And when you were working with forces that could destroy reality, one mistake was enough. The ancient humans had faced a choice. They could keep their technology and watch it slowly destroy them through inevitable accidents and misuse. Or they could give up everything, start over, and hope that next time they would be wiser. They chose the second option. Kate said there were more tablets to translate, thousands more, but the basic story was clear. Humanity was not new to space. They were returning to it. And somewhere deep in human DNA, in the old parts of the brain that remembered things the conscious mind forgot, there were warnings. Instincts telling humans to be careful with certain ideas, to fear certain technologies. She looked at the assembled aliens and said something that made them all uncomfortable. She said maybe humanity seemed primitive because part of them remembered what being advanced had cost. Maybe they were slow to develop dangerous technologies because their ancestors had left biological warnings programmed into their descendants. Commander Naylor asked what they should do with this information. Kate admitted she did not know. The galactic community needed to be told, but she feared what might happen when other species learned that humans had previously achieved an abandoned power that made current galactic technology look like stone tools. Some species might fear humans. Others might try to stop human development before they became too powerful again. And some might try to use humans to recreate the lost technologies, to unlock the secrets of reality manipulation and time control that ancient humans had mastered. Kelvin understood the danger immediately. He asked Kate what she wanted from them. She said she wanted help. Help translating the rest of the archive. Help understanding what ancient humanity had built and why it had failed. And help making sure that if humans did achieve greatness again, this time they would do it right. News of the Varath Prime discovery leaked within 3 days despite all security measures. A junior scientist sent a message to a colleague at another university, who mentioned it to their supervisor, who discussed it with someone on the Galactic Council. Within a week, every major government in known space knew that humans had apparently destroyed an advanced civilization tens of thousands of years ago. The reaction was immediate and panicked. The Galactic Council called an emergency session, something that had only happened 17 times in the past 2,000 years. Representatives from 63 species gathered on the council homeworld of Axion, and for the first time in galactic history, humans were the primary topic of discussion rather than just observers. Kate received the summons while she was still on Varath Prime, working through the translations with Dr. Kelvin and his team. The archive contained not just warnings, but detailed technical descriptions of the technologies ancient humans had built. Most of it remained beyond Kate's ability to translate, but the parts she could read were terrifying. One tablet described a weapon that could target specific genetic sequences and eliminate them from existence across an entire planetary system simultaneously. Another detailed a machine that converted consciousness into pure energy, allowing humans to exist as beings of thought without physical form. The technology worked, but humans discovered too late that consciousness without physical anchoring slowly dissolved into the background energy of the universe. Commander Naylor told Kate she had to appear before the council and explain what they had found. She agreed but insisted that Dr. Kelvin come with her. They needed an outside perspective, someone who could confirm the discoveries and validate the translations. Kelvin agreed, though he admitted feeling conflicted about defending humans to the council. The journey to Axion took 4 days through faster-than-light travel. Kate spent the time preparing her testimony and trying not to think about the implications of what she had discovered. Her entire understanding of human history had been overturned. Everything she thought she knew about human evolution and development was apparently a carefully constructed lie that her ancestors had created to protect their descendants from their own past. She kept thinking about the biological warnings mentioned in the tablets, the instinctive fear of certain ideas that seemed programmed into human psychology. What if human caution around advanced technology was not just cultural, but genetic? What if her ancestors had literally modified their own DNA to make future generations afraid of repeating their mistakes? The council chamber on Axion was impressive. A massive circular room, with seats arranged in concentric rings rising toward a domed ceiling. Each species had a designated section, and the room could hold over 1,000 representatives when fully assembled. Today it was packed beyond capacity. Additional observers filled every available space. Kate stood in the center of the chamber, with Dr. Kelvin beside her. Above them, holographic displays showed images of the Verath Prime archive and translations of selected tablets. The atmosphere felt hostile. Kate could see fear and anger in the faces of representatives from dozens of species. Chancellor Vex of the Meridian Collective called the session to order. He was an imposing figure, nearly 8 feet tall, with crystalline skin that reflected light in rainbow patterns. His voice echoed through the chamber as he asked Kate to explain the discoveries on Verath Prime and confirm whether the translations were accurate. Kate spoke clearly and honestly. She explained how her organization had found similar tablets on Earth decades ago. She described the translation process and admitted that humans still could not read everything in the archive. But what they could read confirmed that ancient humans had achieved technological supremacy that made current galactic civilization look primitive by comparison. A representative from the Hive Collective interrupted her. The Hive were insectoid beings who thought with a group mind. Their speaker asked the question everyone was thinking. If humans had such power before, what was stopping them from achieving it again? And if they did, what prevented them from using it to dominate or destroy the rest of the galaxy? Kate hesitated. It was a fair question, without a good answer. She said that ancient humans had destroyed their own civilization specifically to prevent that outcome. They had chosen to forget their power and start over because they recognized they could not be trusted with it. That choice, that sacrifice, suggested modern humans had learned something important from their ancestors' mistakes. Chancellor Vex was not satisfied with that answer. He pointed out that modern humans had no memory of those mistakes. The lessons ancient humans learned had died with them. Modern humanity was starting from scratch, making the same choices and facing the same temptations without the wisdom that came from previous failures. Dr. Kelvin asked permission to speak. When granted, he stepped forward and addressed the council in a calm, measured tone. He said he had spent his career studying extinct civilizations. He had walked through the ruins of species who reached too far and paid the ultimate price. But, In all his years of research, he had never found a civilization that successfully warned its own descendants about the dangers ahead. Ancient humans could have preserved their technology in hidden vaults for future generations to discover. They could have left instructions for rebuilding their civilization quickly and efficiently. Instead, they left warnings. They deliberately made the dangerous knowledge difficult to recover, while making the cautionary lessons easier to find. That choice demonstrated wisdom that most species never achieved. A crystalline representative named Harmony 7 spoke next. Her voice sounded like musical notes, translated by machines into words. She asked Kate directly whether Earth's government had access to any of the technologies described in the archive. She wanted to know if humans were secretly researching reality manipulation or consciousness transfer, or any of the other nightmares ancient humanity had created. Kate answered truthfully. She said Earth had fragments of ancient technology, pieces that nobody fully understood, but the warnings were deliberately encoded to prevent easy reconstruction. Ancient humans made sure their descendants would recognize danger when they encountered it, but could not simply rebuild the weapons and machines that had destroyed Verith Prime. The questioning continued for hours. Representative after representative expressed concern about humanity's potential. Some suggested restricting human access to certain technologies. Others proposed monitoring human scientific development to prevent dangerous research. A few extreme voices called for removing humans from the galactic community entirely until they proved they could be trusted. Kate felt her temper rising as the proposals grew more extreme. Finally, she interrupted a speaker who was suggesting mandatory genetic testing for all humans to identify potential threats. She pointed out that every species in the chamber had the potential for violence and destruction. The only difference was that humans had already proved they could recognize their own capacity for harm and choose to limit it. She asked the council to consider what ancient humans had sacrificed. They gave up immortality technologies that could have made them live forever. They abandoned faster-than-light systems more advanced than anything currently used in the galaxy. They destroyed knowledge that could have made them gods, and they did it not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. Because they loved their descendants enough to give them a chance at a different future. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some representatives supported Kate's position. Others rejected it entirely. Chancellor Vex called for order multiple times before the noise finally subsided. He announced that the council would vote on several proposals regarding humanity's status in the galactic community. The first vote was whether to expel humans entirely. It failed narrowly, only receiving support from about 30% of representatives. The second vote was whether to restrict human access to advanced technologies. It came closer to passing, but ultimately failed as well. The third vote proposed joint oversight of the Verith Prime archive. Any discoveries made there would be shared with the entire galactic community, and research would be conducted by mixed teams of human and non-human scientists. This proposal passed with over 70% support. Finally, the council voted on whether to require humans to report any additional discoveries of ancient human technology or artifacts. This passed unanimously. Kate agreed to the terms on behalf of Earth's government, though she worried about what it would mean for ongoing research into the tablets and artifacts already in Earth's possession. After the session ended, Dr. Kelvin approached Kate in the waiting area outside the chamber. He told her she had done well, better than he expected. Kate thanked him, but admitted she felt like she had failed. The council's fear was palpable. Humans would now be watched constantly, scrutinized for any sign they were recreating their ancestors' mistakes. Kelvin disagreed. He said the alternative was much worse. If the council had voted to expel humanity or severely restrict their development, it could have led to conflict or even war. Instead, humanity would be integrated into the galactic community with oversight and collaboration. It was not ideal, but it was workable. Kate asked what he thought about the archive and the warnings. Did he believe humans could learn from their ancestors' mistakes? Kelvin was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised her. He said every advanced species eventually faced the same choice: how to handle power beyond their ability to control it. Most species either destroyed themselves or became so cautious they stopped advancing entirely. But humans had found a third option. They had pressed the reset button on their own civilization, giving themselves another chance to approach the problem differently. Whether they would succeed this time was unknown. But the fact that they had tried, that they had sacrificed everything for the possibility of a better outcome, suggested they might be capable of something truly remarkable. He said the Council was afraid of humans, but they were also watching to see if humans could succeed where others had failed. If humanity could advance to great power while maintaining wisdom and restraint, it would change everything. It would prove that the cycle of rise and fall that plagued every civilization could be broken. Kate felt the weight of that expectation settle on her shoulders. Humanity was not just being judged on their own merits. They were being measured against the possibility that they might show the entire galaxy a better way forward. Kate returned to Veroth Prime 6 weeks after the council hearing. The archive had changed in her absence. Teams from a dozen different species now worked alongside human researchers, all carefully cataloging and translating the tablets under strict protocols. The atmosphere was tense but productive. Everyone understood they were working on something that could reshape galactic understanding of history and power. Dr. Kelvin met her at the entrance to the archive. He looked excited, which was unusual for the normally reserved scientist. He told her they had discovered something important while excavating deeper into the archive structure. There were more chambers below, sections that had been deliberately sealed and hidden. The excavation team had been careful, using sonic mapping to locate hollow spaces without damaging anything. They found 3 additional levels beneath the main archive. The first 2 contained more tablets, bringing the total count to nearly 15,000. But the 3rd level was different. It contained a single massive chamber, with a structure in the center that nobody could identify. Kate followed Kelvin down the newly cleared passages. The air grew colder as they descended, and her breath created clouds even inside her environment suit. The walls changed from rough stone to something smoother, almost metallic but not quite. The material responded to light in strange ways, seeming to absorb and reflect it simultaneously. The chamber at the bottom took Kate's breath away. It was enormous, easily 300 feet across and at least 100 feet high. In the center stood a monolith made of the same strange material as the walls. It was perfectly smooth, perfectly black, and roughly 40 feet tall. No symbols marked its surface. Kate approached carefully. The monolith radiated a sense of importance, like standing in front of a memorial or sacred site. She reached out to touch it, and Dr. Kelvin warned her to be careful. They had tried various tests, but the monolith refused to react to anything. It seemed completely inert. The moment Kate's gloved hand made contact, the monolith activated. Light burst from its surface, projecting into the air above it. Everyone in the chamber stepped back in shock. The light formed into shapes and images, then finally a figure that looked unmistakably human. The woman who appeared was middle-aged, her face lined with exhaustion and sadness. She wore clothing that looked both familiar and strange, clearly human in design, but made from materials that did not exist in current human society. Her eyes held depths of experience that made Kate uncomfortable to meet. When the figure spoke, the monolith translated her words into every language simultaneously. Kate heard English. Dr. Kelvin heard his own language, and the other scientists each heard their native tongues. The technology was far beyond anything the galactic community had achieved. The woman introduced herself as Director Laura Hayes of the Varath Recovery Initiative. She said she was recording this message as the last surviving member of the human colony on Varath Prime. Everyone else had died in the chaos following the recursion event. She had stayed behind, specifically to create this final message for whoever eventually found the archive. Laura explained that the tablets above contained warnings about specific technologies. They described what ancient humans had built and why those creations had failed. But here, in this deepest chamber, she wanted to provide context. She wanted future generations to understand not just what happened, but why it happened, and what ancient humans hoped would come from their sacrifice. The hologram shifted to show images of Earth as it had existed 200,000 years ago. The planet looked different from modern Earth, with cities that covered entire continents and structures that reached into space. Laura described a civilization that had conquered disease, aging, and even death itself. Humans lived for thousands of years, their bodies enhanced by technology that repaired damage faster than it could accumulate. But immortality brought unexpected problems. Without death to provide urgency, human society grew stagnant. People stopped taking risks, stopped innovating, stopped pushing boundaries because they had infinite time to accomplish their goals eventually. The civilization began to calcify, becoming rigid and unchanging. Some humans rejected immortality and chose to remain mortal. They formed communities that accepted aging and death as natural parts of existence. These groups became the creative centers of human civilization, producing most of the new ideas and innovations, but they were small minorities, viewed as strange by the immortal majority. Then someone created the consciousness transfer matrix. The technology allowed human minds to be copied and moved between bodies, uploaded into machines, or even broadcast across space as pure information. It seemed like the ultimate freedom, the ability to exist in any form and any location. Laura's expression grew dark as she described what happened next. The consciousness transfer matrix worked perfectly. Too perfectly. Humans began copying themselves, creating backups in case something happened to their primary bodies. Then they started creating multiple active copies, allowing one person to exist in dozens of places simultaneously. Each version experienced different things and developed different perspectives. They were all the same person, but also not the same person. Some copies decided they were the real version, and the others were imposters. Conflicts erupted between different versions of the same individual. Philosophical battles that sometimes turned violent. Worse, the technology revealed something terrifying about human consciousness. When copied perfectly and run in parallel, the copies eventually synchronized and merged back into a single consciousness, spanning multiple bodies. But the process was not always clean. Sometimes personalities broke down, fragmenting into pieces that could not reform properly. The galactic community watched this in horror. Human civilization was consuming itself, not through war or disaster, but through the simple act of trying to transcend biological limitations. Some alien species tried to help. Others cut contact entirely, afraid the madness would spread. Then someone activated the first recursion engine on Varath Prime. Laura said they still did not know exactly what the inventor intended. The theory was that the engine could manipulate reality itself, allowing humans to restructure matter and energy at the most fundamental level. In practice, it created a cascade effect that began unraveling causality in expanding waves. The colonists tried to shut down the engine, but discovered they could not. It had become self-sustaining, feeding on the fabric of reality itself. As the effect spread, time began flowing differently in affected areas. Some zones aged thousands of years in moments. Others froze completely. Causality broke down, with effects occurring before causes. Laura described the final days in clinical detail. The colony leaders made the hard decision to destroy everything, rather than let the recursion engine spread to other worlds. They broadcast warnings to all human colonies. They triggered every emergency protocol they had, and they activated systems that had been built specifically for this scenario. Weapons designed to destroy human civilization itself if it ever became too dangerous to continue. The hologram showed Earth as massive structures appeared in orbit and fired downward. Laura explained these were the reset platforms, weapons that ancient humans had built as a last resort. They did not destroy the planet, but instead eliminated all advanced technology on the surface. Cities collapsed. Power grids failed. Machines stopped working. Within days, human civilization had regressed thousands of years. But the reset platforms did more than just destroy technology. They also modified human genetics, removing the knowledge and capability to quickly rebuild. Future generations would have to rediscover everything slowly. The hope was that this forced slow development would give humanity time to mature, to develop wisdom alongside power. Kate felt tears running down her face as she watched. Her ancestors had not simply abandoned their civilization. They had deliberately destroyed it to save the universe from their own creations. And they had done so knowing that future generations would never understand the sacrifice being made on their behalf. Laura's hologram turned to face the camera directly. She said she was recording this message for those future generations. She wanted them to know that ancient humans had loved them enough to give up everything. The choice to activate the reset platforms had not been easy. Many people argued against it, saying humanity deserved another chance to fix their mistakes without such extreme measures. But the recursion engine proved that some mistakes could not be fixed. Some doors, once opened, could not be closed again. Ancient humans had learned that lesson the hardest way possible. They hoped their descendants would learn it more gently, through warnings and stories, rather than through direct experience of reality unraveling around them. The hologram began to fade. Laura's final words echoed through the chamber. She said the greatest gift ancient humans could give their descendants was the chance to start fresh, to approach the question of power and progress from a different angle. She hoped that modern humans would learn from the warnings, without having to repeat the catastrophes that created them. She also said something that made Kate's heart stop. She said Verath Prime was not the only archive. Ancient humans had built dozens of them across the galaxy, each containing similar warnings, but also specific information about different failed technologies. She provided coordinates for 5 other locations, worlds where additional archives waited to be discovered. As the hologram disappeared entirely, Kate stood in silence, trying to process everything she had learned. Dr. Kelvin approached her carefully. He asked if she was all right. Kate shook her head. She was not all right. She had just learned that her entire species carried the genetic legacy of a civilization that had destroyed itself rather than continue existing. The coordinates Laura Hayes provided led to archives scattered across 5 different star systems. Within 3 months of discovering the Verith Prime recording, expeditions were launched to each location. Kate volunteered to lead the team investigating the closest archive, located in a system called Epsilon Centauri, about 40 light-years from Earth. The journey gave her time to think about everything they had learned. The Galactic Council had reacted to Laura's recording with mixed emotions. Some species felt vindicated in their concerns about humanity. Others saw the recording as proof that humans could recognize their own capacity for destruction and take steps to prevent it. Earth's government struggled with the revelation that human genetics had been deliberately modified by ancient ancestors. Religious groups debated whether the reset platforms proved divine intervention, or humanity's fall from grace. Scientific communities argued about whether modern humans should try to reverse the genetic modifications or embrace them as intended protection against their own worst impulses. Kate found herself caught between competing perspectives. Part of her felt angry at ancient humans for making choices that affected billions of descendants without their consent. Another part felt grateful for ancestors wise enough to save humanity from itself, even at tremendous cost. The archive on Epsilon Centauri turned out to be smaller than Vareth Prime, but more focused. It contained only 2,000 tablets, all dealing with a single technology called quantum consciousness networking. The warnings described how ancient humans had connected their minds directly, creating a shared mental space where thoughts and experiences could be exchanged instantly. The technology worked beautifully at first. Humans solved complex problems through direct collaboration of minds. Scientific advancement accelerated dramatically. Art and creativity flourished as ideas flowed freely between individuals. For a generation, quantum consciousness networking seemed like humanity's greatest achievement. Then people started losing their sense of individual identity. The constant connection to other minds made it difficult to determine which thoughts were your own and which came from the network. Some users found themselves unable to disconnect, their consciousness so intertwined with others that separation meant personality death. The tablets described attempts to fix the problems through regulations and usage limits. None of it worked. The technology was too attractive, too useful, too addictive. Eventually, ancient humans had to make another impossible choice. They shut down the quantum consciousness network entirely, destroying the infrastructure and erasing the knowledge of how to rebuild it. Kate read through the tablets with Dr. Kelvin, who had joined her expedition to Epsilon Centauri. They worked well together now, having developed mutual respect through months of collaboration. Kelvin pointed out patterns in the warnings that Kate had missed, while Kate provided insights into human psychology that helped decode ambiguous sections. One evening, after a long day of translation work, they sat together in the expedition camp, watching the alien sunset. Kelvin asked Kate what she thought humanity should do with all this knowledge. Should modern humans try to avoid the technologies that destroyed ancient civilization? Or should they study the warnings carefully and attempt to succeed where their ancestors failed? Kate admitted she did not know. The safe choice was to avoid everything ancient humans had warned against. Never develop consciousness transfer. Never build quantum networks. Never attempt to manipulate reality at fundamental levels. But that path felt like admitting defeat, like accepting that humans could never be trusted with real power. The alternative was to study the warnings thoroughly, understand exactly why ancient technologies failed, and develop modern versions with proper safeguards. It was riskier, but offered the possibility of achieving everything ancient humans had reached for, while avoiding their catastrophic mistakes. Kelvin pointed out a third option. Humanity could develop some of the warned technologies while permanently abandoning others. They could make conscious choices about which risks were worth taking and which were too dangerous to ever attempt. The warnings provided a roadmap of what not to do, allowing modern humans to navigate around the worst pitfalls. Kate liked that approach, but worried about implementation. Who decided which technologies were acceptable and which were forbidden? How could they ensure that future generations honored those decisions? Ancient humans had tried to make those choices permanent through genetic modification, and modern humans were debating whether to undo their work. News arrived during dinner one evening that another expedition had found something unexpected at a different archive site. This one contained not just warnings, but also detailed technical specifications for some of the failed technologies. The information was sealed behind complex puzzles that required deep understanding of the warnings to solve, ensuring that only people who understood the dangers could access the knowledge. The discovery sparked immediate debate. Some people wanted the technical specifications destroyed immediately. Others argued they should be preserved and studied carefully. The Galactic Council demanded access to all information found in the archives, citing the agreement Kate had made months earlier. They claimed that ancient humans had specifically hidden the technical details for good reasons, and that sharing them with the galaxy would be irresponsible. The Council threatened sanctions. Earth threatened to withdraw from the galactic community entirely. Kate found herself drafted into emergency negotiations. The Council wanted her to explain why humans should have exclusive access to information that could affect the entire galaxy. Earth's diplomats wanted her to defend humanity's right to control their own ancestral knowledge. She tried to find a middle ground. In her testimony before an emergency council session, Kate proposed a joint oversight committee. The committee would include representatives from multiple species, including, but not limited to, humans. Any research into ancient human technologies would require committee approval. Any safety concerns could be raised by any member species. And any discoveries would be shared openly with appropriate security measures. The proposal satisfied nobody completely, but seemed acceptable to most parties. After 2 weeks of intense negotiation, a modified version was adopted. The Galactic Archive Research Initiative was established with representatives from 15 species, including 3 humans. Kate was appointed as one of the human representatives, much to her surprise and dismay. She returned to Epsilon Centauri one final time to close down the expedition site. Dr. Kelvin helped her pack equipment and prepare the archive for long-term preservation. They worked in comfortable silence, having grown used to each other's presence over months of collaboration. As they were preparing to leave, Kelvin asked Kate if she thought humanity would make it. Would modern humans succeed where ancient humans failed? Would they develop wisdom to match their growing power? Kate looked at the archive one last time before answering. She said she thought humans had a chance. Not because they were smarter than their ancestors, or more ethical, or more careful, but because they had something ancient humans lacked, a detailed record of what not to do. And they had allies, other species who could provide perspective and warnings when humans got too confident in their own abilities. Ancient humans had faced their challenges alone, believing they were the most advanced species in the galaxy. Modern humans knew they were part of a larger community. That difference might be enough to change the outcome. Kelvin said something that surprised her. He said the galactic community needed humans to succeed, not just for humanity's sake, but for everyone. Every species eventually faced the same questions about power and progress. Most failed the test and either destroyed themselves or became too cautious to advance further. If humans could find a third path, if they could achieve greatness while maintaining wisdom, it would prove that the cycle could be broken. He said that was why he had dedicated himself to helping translate the archives, even when it would have been easier to support restricting humanity. Because he believed that helping humans succeed was the most important work he could do for the entire galaxy. Kate felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders, but this time it did not feel crushing. It felt purposeful. Ancient humans had given their descendants a gift of warnings and wisdom. The Galactic Council, despite their fears, was giving modern humans a chance to prove themselves. And individuals like Dr. Kelvin were offering their support and expertise. She had everything she needed to succeed. Whether she and her species would actually succeed remained to be seen. But for the first time since discovering the archives, Kate felt hopeful. As their ship lifted off from Epsilon Centauri, Kate looked back at the archive site one last time. 10,000 tablets on Verath Prime, 2,000 on Epsilon Centauri, more at other sites scattered across the galaxy, all of them containing warnings from humans who loved their descendants enough to sacrifice everything. Those warnings would not go to waste. Kate would make sure of it. She would spend the rest of her life helping humanity learn from ancient mistakes without repeating them. She would work with the Galactic Archive Research Initiative to ensure that knowledge was used wisely. And she would do everything in her power to prove that humans could be trusted with greatness. The archive disappeared below the horizon as the ship accelerated toward orbit. But its lessons remained, carved in stone and preserved across millennia. Ancient humans had left warnings. Modern humans had heard them. What happened next would determine whether the warnings were enough. Kate believed they were. She had to believe they were, because the alternative, accepting that humans could never be trusted with power, meant giving up on everything humanity could become. She thought about Laura Hayes, recording her final message in a dying colony, surrounded by the ruins of human achievement. Laura had believed that future generations deserved a chance to do better. She had enough faith in her distant descendants to destroy her entire civilization and start fresh. Kate would not let that faith be misplaced. She would honor the sacrifice ancient humans made by ensuring that modern humans learned from it. The archive contained 10,000 warnings. Kate had glanced once and understood them. Now she would spend a lifetime making sure others understood them too. The ship entered faster than light travel, and the Epsilon Centauri system disappeared behind them. But the warnings remained, waiting patiently in the dark, waiting for humans to grow wise enough to need them, waiting for the day when humanity would finally succeed where their ancestors had failed. That day might be years away, or centuries, or millennia, but it would come. Kate was certain of it, because ancient humans had given their descendants the tools to succeed, and modern humans, for all their flaws, knew how to use tools effectively. The warnings had been heard, the lessons had been learned. Now came the hard part, putting them into practice and building a civilization that combined power with wisdom. It would not be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever was. Kate smiled and closed her eyes, letting the hum of the ship's engines lull her toward sleep. Tomorrow they would reach Earth, and she would begin her work with the Galactic Archive Research Initiative. But tonight she could rest, knowing that she had done her part in recovering humanity's lost history. The archive remained on Verath Prime and Epsilon Centauri and a dozen other worlds, monuments to human hubris and human wisdom in equal measure. They would stand for millennia more, silent guardians containing warnings that could save or doom the species that created them. The choice of which outcome occurred rested with modern humans. Kate intended to make sure they chose wisely.